The air outside the courthouse felt electric, heavy with the kind of tension that makes your chest tighten. By sunrise, the sidewalks were already packed, reporters, photographers, die-hard supporters, and curious onlookers jostling for a glimpse of history. Everyone knew this wasn't just another celebrity trial. This was the day Sean Diddy Combs would hear the words that could redefine his life forever. When the jury finally returned, you could almost hear the room stop breathing. One by one, the charges were read. Trafficking of Cassie, not guilty. Sex trafficking of Jane, not guilty. For a moment, Diddy's shoulders eased, but then transportation, to engage in prostitution, Cassie, guilty. Transportation to engage in prostitution, Jane, guilty. It was a split verdict that sent ripples through the courtroom. Diddy had escaped the most severe charges that could have meant 15 years to life, but these two convictions under the Mann Act still carried the weight of up to 10 years each. The government was pushing for 4 to 5 years behind bars. His defense argued for less than 2, pointing out he had already served nearly 10 months. Inside, reactions clashed. Quiet relief from Diddy's family, stunned murmurs from others. Outside, a wave of noise erupted as news traveled down the block. Supporters shouted, "Free Diddy!" while critics insisted justice had only begun. But no one was ready for what would happen next, a fight over his freedom that would set the stage for the day's most explosive moments. The verdict was barely an hour old when the next fight began, one that could determine whether Sean Diddy Combs would walk out of the courthouse a free man or be led back to the cold, grey confines of MDC Brooklyn. His defense team moved quickly, armed with a proposal worth $50 million in secured bond. They painted a picture of a man who was neither a flight risk nor a danger to the community. He had already surrendered his passport months before his arrest, they argued, and paid off his Miami home where he planned to stay under strict supervision. Travel would be limited to Florida and New York for legal meetings, every move monitored by U.S. pretrial services. It was a meticulously crafted offer. And yet, the prosecution wasted no time dismantling it. To them, Diddy wasn't just a defendant convicted of 2 Mann Act charges. He was, in their words, an extremely violent person, someone with a history of intimidation, someone who had already tried to manipulate the system from behind bars. They cited allegations of illicit phone calls, attempts to reach witnesses, and a calculated PR campaign to soften his image while in custody. In the packed courtroom, the tension thickened. Family members leaned forward, hoping the judge might be swayed. Supporters outside chanted in anticipation of a dramatic walk to freedom. But when the gavel came down, the decision was final. Bail denied. The judge wasn't convinced the risk was gone. Diddy would remain in custody, awaiting his sentencing date. As he was escorted out, a flicker of frustration crossed his face. But this wasn't the last dramatic moment the courtroom would see that day. The storm was only building. The courtroom was still buzzing from the bail denial when the moment everyone would be talking about for days arrived. The sentencing phase began with the steady rhythm of legal procedure, charges recapped, evidence revisited, each point laid out with clinical precision. But beneath the formalities, a tension pulsed, sharp and dangerous. Diddy sat ramrod straight at the defense table, his tailored suit a last remnant of the image he once commanded. His hands were clasped loosely, but his jaw was set tight, eyes locked on the judge as though sheer focus could bend the outcome. Around him, reporters leaned forward, fingers poised above keyboards, ready for anything. And then it happened. The judge delivered the sentence, a term long enough to shatter the illusion of untouchability that had surrounded him for decades. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then, like a dam breaking, his voice erupted, "This is wrong! This is a setup!" The words cracked through the room, echoing against wood and stone. Court officers surged forward instinctively, a wall of authority closing in. His attorneys leaned in, murmuring urgently, trying to calm him, but the fury in his eyes burned hotter. He jabbed a finger toward the prosecution, accusing them of twisting the truth, of orchestrating his downfall. The gallery leaned forward in stunned silence. Some faces registered shock, others barely hid their satisfaction. The gavel slammed down hard, demanding order. But the moment had already escaped the court's control. Raw emotion had torn through the thin veil of decorum. When the shouting stopped, the reality remained. The sentence stood. And as the officers closed in to escort him away, it was clear. This fight had moved beyond legal arguments. This was personal now. The moment Sean Diddy Combs was escorted through the side door, the energy outside the courthouse shifted into overdrive. Word of his outburst and sentencing had already hit phones across the crowd. Social media timelines flooded with breaking alerts, hashtags lit up, and live streams from the courthouse steps began drawing thousands of viewers in real time. Supporters surged forward, chanting, "Free Diddy!" as camera crews scrambled to capture every angle. Some were lifelong fans, insisting he'd been targeted for his wealth and influence. Others came for the spectacle, wanting to witness the fall of one of music's most untouchable figures. But not everyone outside was on his side. Small knots of critics clashed verbally with his backers, their arguments sharp and unrelenting. At one point, a heated exchange over Cassie Ventura's allegations drew a crowd of shouting onlookers. Accusations of victim blaming and media bias flew back and forth. Courthouse police tightened the barricades, their faces set in grim focus. In the middle of it all, bizarre scenes played out. One supporter drenched themselves in baby oil, claiming it was a protest against the slick lies of the prosecution. A bewildered reporter wiped the substance off her shirt, muttering into her mic. News vans lined the block, satellite dishes aimed skyward, reporters speaking into cameras with the urgency of a historic moment. Clips of Diddy's defiance in court looped endlessly on portable screens, feeding the frenzy. But when it became clear he wouldn't walk free that day, the crowd's energy fractured. Some dispersed in disappointment, others vowed to return for sentencing. And as the heavy courthouse doors closed behind him, the chants faded, replaced by the low hum of a city already preparing for the next chapter in this unfolding drama. As the crowd outside thinned, the prosecution's narrative about Cassie Ventura continued to cast a long shadow. In court, they had laid out a disturbing timeline, from when Cassie was just 19, newly signed to Bad Boy Records, to years of alleged abuse and control by a man who was not just her boyfriend, but her boss. They recounted incident after incident. 2007 after a dinner, 2010 at a princess-themed party, 2011 when she was accused of being involved with Kid Cudi, 2013 in her apartment and again in Jamaica, 2015 in Las Vegas, and finally 2016 at the Intercontinental Hotel. Moments, they said, were backed by photos, surveillance video, and the testimony of friends. Prosecutors argued these were not isolated cases of domestic violence, but part of a pattern that amounted to sex trafficking. The defense countered that the jury had already rejected the most severe charges, proving the government had overreached. Still, the two Mann Act convictions remain. Now the stakes are in the hands of the judge, who will weigh a pre-sentencing investigation, interviews with family, friends, employers, and even victims, before deciding whether Diddy serves just a few more months or several more years. For his supporters, the trial is a cautionary tale about power, fame, and media narratives. For his critics, it's a reckoning long overdue. Either way, the myth of Diddy as an untouchable mogul has been stripped away, replaced by the image of a man in a suit escorted from a courtroom under the weight of a prison sentence. When sentencing day comes, the world will be watching again. Not just to see how long he serves, but to see whether this chapter becomes a footnote in his career, or the final line in the story of his empire. What's your take on the verdict? Was justice served, or is there more to the story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We will read them all. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next big update in this case.